that's always a challenge.
Mhm.
Uh, so there's a few different software programs that eliminate most of that, but you still can't eliminate the part that's like for cable and your internet connection. That part you can't eliminate. That's just part of the internet. You know,
Yeah.
and I'm
Go ahead.
I'm sure it's like when you used to see those old broadcasts on TV when people would have phones and it would go to the satellite and then you'd see them talk and it would come back like 30 seconds later you'd
Yeah.
get the answer. Um, it it's not quite that bad, but definitely leaves a lot to be desired as far as quickness. So there's a few things that they say you're not supposed to use wireless if you're trying to play with other people because
Yeah.
wireless slow things down, and Bluetooth headphones are not so good because that slows things down. So
Mhm.
there's a lot of things you learn over the time that we're off like
Yeah. Yeah. So, how did you get started in music?
that. Let's see. This is the part I knew you were going to ask.
The
Well, first of all, my mom and dad both had like um, a lot of music in their background. Like they both sang in the choir, and my mom sang in a quartet in Elizabethtown College when she was in college, and she also played cello. And my dad and mom both played piano. My dad actually tuned pianos for a while
Mhm.
as sort of a second job. It wasn't his primary job, but it was main job was not tuning pianos. But he did that, and after he was done tuning the piano, he'd always play this song. He's going to kill me for saying this, but he always played Black Hawk Waltz, the song like that. He'd always play on the piano. It was in the key of E flat, which is nasty because you got
Ridiculous key.
right. So, but I guess it was a good one to check your tuning on the piano to see if it was in tune or not. So, he knew how to play that one song really, really well. And I mean, I guess he probably knew some other things because I saw him like read things out of music and stuff like that. But that one song he had memorized and he could play it really, really well. So
Yeah.
he used to always do that. Um, I guess to continue on. Then my aunt Hannah um, had a lot of really cool records. So she had Sticky Fingers by the Rolling Stones, and she had Abbey Road by the Beatles, and Meet the Beatles and stuff. And she was only 7 years older than me, so it was sort of like almost like an older sister to me.
Okay. Yeah.
And so she always had cool music. So when we go to my grandparents' house, it's like, can I go listen to your records, kind of thing. And that was a great education, especially the Beatles and the Stones. I don't remember um, much about that specifically, other than that was just something I really looked forward to.
You remember when the Beatles broke up?
No, they were already broken up by the time I became interested enough to know what that meant.
Okay. All right.
Uh, and but I was always a big George Harrison fan. He was the lead guitar player, right? So
Yeah.
that was just he was the guy. Um, on Abbey Road, I remember really being fascinated with that what is that? And then there's one spot in the middle of the song, it's like this the crazy stuff that you hear is you hear Lennon switch his pickups to the you hear him switch his pickup selector, and
Yeah.
it's just that little cool stuff like that. You're like, wow, what is
Yeah.
that sound?
Well, the
Uh,
thing of it is, that's a rock and roll band. That by the
yeah,
time the Abbey Road comes along, there's all kinds of weirdnesses that kind of like it ceases. I don't want to say it ceases to be rock and roll. It redefines what rock and roll is capable of.
yeah, and of course, I didn't. None of us really knew back then that a lot of the songs didn't have all four Beatles on it. I mean, half that
Mhm.
album was done with three people, and depends on who wrote the song, which three people were playing on it. But You know, apparently there was a lot of turmoil. Well, not apparently, we all know there's a lot of
Yeah,
turmoil
yeah.
now. But what a great
One of 'em-
album! I
every
mean,
one of them quit at one point.
yeah. But the thing is, they all said, you know what? Let's get together and play one more and make it like we used to. And it's probably one of their best albums. It's
Yeah,
definitely my favorite one.
yeah,
My favorite one. I don't know about other people, but my favorite one.
yeah.
But I still like I hear it, and I went to my mom's side on of that family on New Year's Day. My mom's family would always have their holiday get together and stuff. And my cousin was dating this guy who was a guitar player then. And he would show me all these Beatles songs, and I remember bugging him to show me the chords to something.
All right.
So we didn't have any tablets or whatever. So my grandmother got out like freezer paper or something, right, and just ripped off a big piece of freezer paper and gave me this big pencil, and I sat down and drew out the chord diagrams as best I could for this
Yeah.
song, you know, and as I knew if I didn't write them down, I was going to forget them, and that's something that I still remember to this day because I tell everybody, you know, like, hey, if you don't write this stuff down, you're going to forget it, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
So you got to do
Even
that.
then.
Yeah. So yeah. And he also showed me this chord. He didn't say it was Purple Haze. He just said, and I hear him now. I'm like, oh, that's "Come On" by Jimi Hendrix. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that was kind of neat. That I didn't know what that was, but you know, he showed me then, you know, what was going on. So that was my mom's side. My mom's you know, brother and my cousins on that side. On my dad's side, they were a lot closer. They lived around York,
Mhm.
and my dad's closest brother had I have three cousins, and my oldest cousin Julie, she's a singer, a very good singer. Um, her younger brother Dave is now the jazz professor at Palm Beach State, I think it is called now, and he's the one that turned me on to like Weather Report and things like that. And then my youngest cousin in that family is Jay. He's a trombone player. So and they all.
Hey, Gibble.
What's that?
What's his last name?
Jay Gibble. You might. What school did you go to?
Well, my brother, I think my brother knew him.
If you went, because he went to Central. They all went to Central.
Okay, yeah, well, Central, in other words, they all can reconvene at the, I think they were Boy Scouts together or something.
Oh yeah. So that could have been. I don't really know about that, but so anyway, you know, there was music on both sides of the family, but especially that side, and especially my cousin Dave, just you know, played so much. I mean, Brecker Brothers and Return to Forever. You know, we mentioned Chick Corea the other day. You know how he passed away and stuff, and I'm pretty sure my cousin Dave's the one that turned me onto that stuff, Chick Corea. And it was really interesting. Is about 10 years ago, my cousin Dave down in Florida, they had this band together called the Jazz Rats, and it was all these educators from like different colleges and universities in Florida, and they put together this little band. It was like a 9 or 10 piece band, and he wrote a song for it called Intercoastal. It was basically his answer to River People by Weather Report. It was the same version. So I get this CD, right, and I'm thinking, well, I'm going to sit down and transcribe my cousin's song just because I wanted to, right? I was just going to write it out. And I was like looking over my notes today in terms of, I think the chords were something like, and you know who that sounds like, right? That sounds like something I'd write.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, you can tell we just had the same influences. It was so crazy to sit down and transcribe something that somebody else that you knew wrote and see so much of yourself in that, you know, that what I learned from.
So when you were a kid, you said the Beatles were like Central? That was the starting point?
Yeah, that was always a starting point. and you know, and then from there, you know, it kind of snowballed into Cream and uh,
I remember you used to tell me about, like, we've known each other
a long time.
35 years.
Yeah,
You used to, like, I was like a hair metal kid, and you're like, you need to listen to Terry Kath.
yeah, yeah. I was really into the band Chicago. I mean, that I couldn't really understand what he was doing. I mean, to me, it was like I guess it was just my introduction to here's how you use a scale. You know,
Yeah,
here's how you improvise. And one of my favorite albums, the one that most people don't like, but one of my favorite ones was Live at Carnegie Hall because it was all jamming. It was just
yeah.
jamming. It was like, you know, songs were like 15 minutes long of just guitar and jamming and stuff. And uh, so I really like that album. But you know, you try to learn as much as you can, and I think that album was the one that really hipped me to the thing that these musicians aren't planning this out. They're improvising.
Yeah.
They're making it up as they go along.
You listen to, like, I'm not as well versed in his playing, but like something like 25 or 6 to 4, when he goes into the solo section, he may start out with kind of pentatonic-y stuff, but he very quickly goes into exotic scales.
Yeah, well,
And he throws everything in that blender.
yeah, well, the other thing was kind of neat that I guess I think about now, and I think, well, that was pretty neat. I wish I would have picked up on it back then. Was the fact that he started it off with the melody. He quoted the melody of the song. And he kind of quotes the melody of the song
Yeah,
uh, as he's playing. So, you know, that was always kind of a neat thing
yeah.
that he did, uh, and I mean, we'll pick up that a little bit later in terms of some other influences that I had that were real close to me. But around that same time period, I got in Chicago. There used to be a radio station down in Baltimore called WBJC. It might still be there. I don't know. Uh, it was a public broadcasting system, and on Saturday nights they used to play this jazz program, and of course, and I remember the name Hank Mobley. I don't know why.
Soul Station.
Yeah, yeah. But they played that, and I guess they played Miles Davis. If they played Hank Mobley, probably like My Funny Valentine, something like that, right? And they're playing all this music, and I'm just a kid, you know. I got a piece of paper out and another pencil, and I would write down the names and stuff. But there was no internet, so you couldn't go look it up.
Yeah.
See who it was. It was just
People have no idea.
right. You don't know what it's like. Anybody who remembers sitting in front of the radio?
The defining change in my life is when I was in Boston and I lived a block away from a record store that I could get
Yeah.
jazz cassettes cheap.
And we got the funny thing was we got you know, you sat with your cassette player right next to the radio, and when some cool song came on, I did this with Frankenstein by Edgar Winter, which was another cool song. I sat by the radio. When I hear the song come on, you hit the play and record really fast. So you hope you get the whole thing without the DJ talking at the beginning or the end, you know. And so that was another neat thing with radio. But anyway, the radio station from Baltimore, they would play all the straight ahead stuff like that. Like I said, they probably played My Funny Valentine by Miles Davis and probably like something off Kind of Blue, you know, Freddie Freeloader or So What or something. And I'm sure like all the standard stuff. And I think they probably went back and played like Count Basie. They didn't really play too much big band stuff. It was a lot of cool little you know, quartet, quintet stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But one time, and they had some guitar stuff on there, so who knows, maybe Grant Green or Wes Montgomery or you know, Kenny Burrell, something like that. But of course, you know, being 10 or 11, it's like you weren't interested in hearing that sound. You know, you wanted to hear the Beatles, you know, the guitar, you know. And one time I hear this drum roll, you know, and you probably know what song. As soon as you hear this drum roll coming up, right? And then suddenly it was into this. Wow, you know, and you hear that the bass guitar, and then you know, then you hear the guitar come in, and it's like, right, and you're like, that was it. That totally changed my life right there, you know.
At 10 years of age.
Yeah, well, I don't know how old I was. It couldn't have been much older than that. Because when did that album come out? 74?
Which album?
Spectrum, Billy
Oh
Cobham.
yeah,
Um,
okay.
so
Yeah.
he knows like I'm hearing this on this station where they're playing like all this other straight ahead stuff, and I'm hearing rock, and but I didn't think of it that way. I just
But
thought, well,
Tommy Bolin on that one, or
yeah, Tommy Bolin, man, what a
okay.
great player he was.
Yeah.
And I didn't know who it was. I didn't have any
Uh,
idea.
and Lee Sklar was on bass.
Yeah, Lee Sklar played with James Taylor and all that crowd, but then played
Yeah.
with Billy Cobham.
But they had I heard that they had a bass player that was like super busy, super fusiony,
Yeah,
and he couldn't hold it together.
no, because
So
you got Billy Cobham that was pretty busy and
yeah, you need somebody to hold down the fort.
yeah, and he did a great job. And so I hear this song and I'm like, well, that's wonderful, but I didn't know who it was. And when it was done, all I could remember was the name was Stratus. That's all I could remember was the name of the song was Stratus.
Okay.
So, and like there was no internet, right? So I just remembered that, and I think the reason I remember it, got to thank the school science teacher for this one. We were probably studying clouds at that point in school, and of course we studied stratus clouds, so I remember that. That's the
Okay.
only. I got something out of science class after all, you know. Name of a Billy Cobham song.
Yeah.
So it wasn't until years later that I discovered, oh, it's Tommy Bolin, and he was on the guitar, and he also played with the James Gang and Deep Purple. But
Yeah.
uh, I was in a band a number of years ago. We did a Tommy Bolin song that he played with a band called Energy, which was like completely different. It was more like the Billy Cobham stuff. It was kind of neat, and he had so many other songs that were just really great. So that was like
Yeah.
that for me was a turning point because here it was. I didn't think of it as being fusion. I thought of it was on a jazz station. The guitar sounded cool. It was
Yeah.
jazz to me, you know, and that was what I was looking for.
Yeah.
From there, you kind of went and found Jeff Beck and
Yeah.
Stanley Clarke and Return to Forever, and then you have a cousin who turns you on to all that kind of cool stuff, Brecker Brothers, and I'm like 16 trying to transcribe a Brecker Brothers horn line, and like,
So when you're primarily self-taught,
yeah, I think I told you.
formerly self-taught.
I had my first guitar lesson this past summer ever. My first formal guitar lesson this past summer with Mike Stern.
All right.
So I guess that was pretty cool, you know. Now everybody says things like you're self-taught. Wow, must have been really hard. It's like, well, you don't lock yourself in a room and don't have any contact with the outside world. It's like I had friends that played guitar. I had friends that took lessons at Campbell's Music, where I ended up and you ended up later, But I had friends there, so they'd be like, "Let's play this song." And I'm like, "I don't know how to play it," and they'd show me. So you had people showing you things all along, and you have records, you have books, and there's a lot of things that you go off of. I did have piano lessons, and I played trombone in the high school band, so I kind of knew how to read music.
Did you read right away guitar music right away?
No, but I didn't really realize there was tab, and I had no clue what that meant, what that was at all.
Yeah.
And I went tried to figure out a George Harrison song that was a slide guitar. I didn't know it was slide guitar. I was like really young. I just thought this is how electric guitars sound, like that. So I tried to figure out the notes, and I tried to figure out on one string because that was easier. I don't remember what song it was. It was on one of his solo albums. It was "Living in the Material World." Was the album, and I remember trying to figure out the notes on one string, but I didn't look at it as the 7th fret or the 9th fret. I looked at it as B and C sharp because that's all I knew. I had to call it a name, so I wrote down letter name B and I wrote down C sharp because that's what it represented to me. And so I immediately started learning the names of the notes just because I was figuring out a song.
Yeah.
And in the reading, I kind of knew how to do that at least a little bit from playing piano and playing trombone, and that helped with bass stuff, obviously, with the trombone.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really make you necessarily great at reading music on the guitar, but it does make you
challenges there.
Yeah, but I guess I eventually kind of worked on it a little bit just because I had to, and all. There was another radio incident like that that happened several years later. There was I don't think this radio station is there anymore. It was WCVT. It was Towson State Radio, and I think they might still have a radio station, but it's not the same call letters. And there was this program on Friday nights called La Mélange, which I believe there was a club down there called the same thing years later by this, or no, the club was called Andi Musique. And I had a gig playing next door at the place called the Delaney Inn, and Eric Snyder and I walked over to this place called Andi Musique. It was a record store.
All right.
And we started talking to the guy, and it turns out this guy was one of the DJs on this program at this radio thing, right? Well, they played the Dixie Dregs, the song called "I'm Freaking Out," and I tell you what, I freaked out when I heard that, because I was like the next day in the record store buying the album. So
Yeah. That was
you
a
know.
changer.
What's that?
That was a game changer for you. I
Yeah,
remember.
yeah. So there's always those little moments like that that you
So
have.
when did you start playing with Eric Snyder?
Right out of, I guess, about a year out of high school.
You didn't play together in high school.
We knew each other. We might have jammed a couple times or something like that. But as far as being in a formal band, it was, I guess, I was about a year out of high school.
Okay.
And wow, what an influence he was. I mean,
Yeah.
I know everybody else talks about their influences like Jimi Hendrix, Eric Clapton. Well, that's always kind of obvious, right?
Yeah.
But we never talk
Lucky
about.
enough to know the person who's the influence.
Right. When you're around the people, like I said, my cousin, and he set that standard. That's still one of the coolest things, is he set that standard. And Eric did the same thing. I mean, and I know I influenced Eric too. I mean, it's not.
Yeah.
It goes both ways.
Well, you were built from the same mold.
Yeah, and then
Guys. Musically, you were of the same. I probably would say you're in many ways opposite one another, personality-wise.
well, he he always. At that time, I was probably more into progressive rock than anything. And of course, that was right up his alley at that point. And so, we would just sit around and just listen to music like Gentle Giant, European stuff. Gentle Giant. We did listen to like Genesis, Selling by the Pound, and Lamb Lies Down on Broadway and stuff. We just used to listen to that for hours and just get inspired by what great music that was. And
was Bobby Campbell in that circle with you?
yeah, actually, Bobby Campbell, I wouldn't say I knew him about the same time period as Eric, but Bobby actually engineered a recording I was in high school with a band I was in with. Another influence of mine was Mike Smith, the trumpet player. He got me just thinking in all kinds of new ways as far as music goes.
Yeah.
And harmony. And in fact, I wrote a trumpet suite for him about 10 years, a little over 10 years ago, that he recorded, which was my debut into the world of classical horn playing, I guess.
Okay.
But Bobby Campbell was actually the engineer on that recording. We stuck
I
in.
know he has a lot of the same influences. He's
Yeah.
friends with Eric.
And but Eric wasn't in that band. Eric wasn't really. We knew. I mean, I kind of knew who he was, but I knew who Bobby was, obviously, from the store.
Yeah.
And all.
Campbell's Music, Spry, PA.
Yeah, got to put a plug in there.
Yeah.
I was there for I guess 16 or 17 years,
I was there for 20.
and I've been at the music store here in State College. I say the new store, but I've been there 18 years. So I've been there actually longer than
Yeah.
the Campbells.
You replaced Scott Anderson,
Yeah,
another legend in this.
yeah. Scott was. I remember the night that we said goodbye to him at Subs Unlimited. I don't know if you were there or not, but he
I
had
was in Boston.
he
I
was.
missed it by a month.
I forget what you call it. He channeled Charlie Parker. You'll have to ask Scott about that. But, yeah, he was a great person to follow, because he just I mean, obviously had a great reputation for being a great
Number one person, influential person in my life.
Hmm.
Changed everything for me.
Yeah,
So
and
give credit where credit is due.
yeah, and he was he encouraged me so much in terms of what I was doing. He was always
Hmm.
very encouraging about everything. I
Hmm.
remember going over there a couple times with demos that I had made, and I would play them, and he'd be like, "Yeah, that sounds really," you know, all, like I said, just always very, very encouraging. Uh,
Yeah.
Thank you, Scott.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, let's see. And Mike Smith and Eric, and the thing with Eric was also a great vocalist, and so he not only inspired you to be better as a musician and write new things, but Eric also was would inspire you to kind of sing. Uh,
Did you sing? Okay, so what is the nature of your singing?
uh,
History of that.
uh, I kind of started that actually probably the band right before uh, Eric was a band called First Flight that I was in with a guy named Dan Keeney and another guy named Steve McDonald. And Steve was actually kind of unique because he had an album by Larry Coryell called Level One. There you go. I'm talking about all this really cool music.
Level one.
Level One,
I
yeah.
saw Larry Coryell at the Lincoln Highway garage. There's a bar
Wow.
at the Lincoln Highway.
No kidding.
Yeah, with Keith Moeller on bass.
Huh.
Remember Keith Moeller?
No.
He was an area upright guy that he has since passed, but he's wonderful.
Yeah.
The two of them met like probably 20 minutes before they went on to play,
Huh.
and it was straight jazz.
Hmm.
No fusion about it.
You know, this album was Level One had Alfonso Muzan on drums, and so right off the bat, it's like, you know,
So okay, so tell our nerd audience, what is fusion?
um, fusion is a blend of the technical definition was any different forms of music, but generally speaking, it's a blend of jazz and rock in some way.
Mhm.
For me, probably a little more rock and probably a little more progressive rock too. And one of the bands I always liked that ties in with the Steve McDonald thing. Not only did he have Larry Coryell, but he also had an album by the band Focus.
Hocus Pocus.
Yeah, Hocus Pocus, man. And what a great
Like Hocus.
song. And he didn't have that album.
Oh,
Yeah, well, I mean, I played that song for like 20 years in every band. That was the last. I mean, how cool was that, right?
yeah.
You got these chords in there that are like, and they're running. He's running through a marsh.
Was that Jan Ackerman? Is that the?
Yeah, Jan Ackerman, and you know, coming back to Tommy Bolin, I mean, he would do that. He would do that thing where he goes, right, and Jan Ackerman would do the same thing. That kind of stuff, right? Chromatic stuff right in the middle of a rock song. I mean, how much cool? And then you got the yodeling part, you know, you know, I can't yodel. I can't even yodel on a guitar, so I'm not.
Yeah, but Eric could.
Yeah, Eric could do it. Eric did it very, very well. Yeah.
Yeah.
We I don't remember what the first band we did that song in, but
I saw you doing it with Alaska at what is it?
well, we did
Emerson's, probably Emerson's at the time.
Yeah, well, the Cove, or
Yeah, now it's the Cove. Yeah.
yeah, I think it was the Cove back then, and then it changed something else. It was the Trail Drive-In for a while, but they never had bands there. But yeah, I think it was the Cove.
All right.
We played at the Dewdrop and around here, and the Gingerbread Man. Played the Gingerbread Man a lot. Tara, wherever she is, she took care of getting us booked in there. And we played this place called Jackhammers, which
That's horrible.
yeah,
Oh my God.
I tell you what, there's a funny story goes along with that. That guy had
Does it require being hid behind a fence?
no,
So-
it it man, you needed one of those polarity testers for the AC electricity, because that guy wired one side of the stage with the positive on the positive blade, and he wired the other side of the stage with the negative on the positive blade. So you couldn't, if you touched somebody on the other opposite side of the stage and they were holding on to electric, you were completing a circuit. It wasn't gonna not. I mean, he told me that he's like, this part's out of phase, that part's in phase. I'm like, you can't be serious. You wired your stage like that, you know. I don't
Here's a
know.
question for you.
That's how I took it. I'm like, I'm not getting any near anybody that's plugged
Here's a
on the other side.
question for you. Performance as a performer. Have you ever played in rooms that the electricity would not power your tube amplifier?
Uh, I don't think so, but I did play downtown State College where we played outside and the power would not. It was on. It was in the beginning of November a couple years ago, and the power would not power my portable heater, my amp.
Okay.
It shut the power down. They had to call like, I don't know, the borough manager to come in and like turn it back on.
Okay. Yeah,
But I mean,
that happened to me twice. Fender
yeah,
Twin, and then once with
yeah,
outside wedding near Philly, and
yeah.
then
I don't recall any place that wasn't that couldn't handle it. Um, there is that old.
and then there was the Waterway in York that could handle my amplifier but couldn't handle my pedal board.
Oh, that's the gingerbread. That was the old
Yeah,
gingerbread, right?
yep.
Um,
I saw many live bands there.
that was my 100-watt Marshall days,
Right.
right? You know, and it was turned up to 10 because that's how you made them sound good, right? I mean, you turn them down and they sound like a tin machine, but you turn them up and they sound like, you know, Clapton and everything.
Mhm.
And you know, I remember playing there and having that amp turned up so loud, and it was turned around and facing the wall, which is funny because in the summertime they had the windows open so that it was going right out where the Course Creek was, and you know, blasting loud, and it was like so loud. And the drummer that we had, he had this crash cymbal that he really liked a lot. He liked to hit it a lot and
Was that
liked to hit it
Edgar?
really hard. Yeah, and I remember, you know, thinking my ear was overloading with cymbals, but then I'm just as bad with that amp turned up the whole way and stuff. And you know, I'm surprised we can hear anything now. But I mean, I started really, you know, wearing earplugs all the time back then. So I've been wearing them for like close to 30 years now.
I still haven't.
But you know, it's weird because everybody says, yeah, you put earplugs in to save your hearing, but then you turn your amp up again just to make it louder. So
Yeah.
you know,
You can't hear it.
yeah,
You can't hear normal.
it's like I can't hear. I got to turn my amp up again. Then I got to put more hearing protectors in.
Yeah.
You know.
So taking the fusion thing in kind of another direction, you said it was and the classic definition of it is jazz and jazz and rock.
Yeah.
Uh, and then there's some strains of it that was like kind of progressive rock-ish, like Return to Forever-ish.
Yeah. Return Forever definitely.
And then there's some strains that were more funk, like Herbie Hancock.
Yeah. I always I never really got into the Headhunters. Not that there's anything wrong with them. I just never really got into them.
Yeah.
That much, other than the ones on Chameleon, and
Yeah.
of course drummers get into the song Actual Proof because that's
Yeah.
you know, and Mike Clark, I never realized that he was the drummer that took Phil Collins' place one of the times in Brand X.
Okay.
Kenward Denard, who played with Pat Martino, took the place of Phil Collins the first time, but then the next time it was Mike Clark, and he did a great job. He did.
You know why I know who Kenward Denard is?
Why?
The Jocko video.
Oh, that's right. He is in that.
He threw the bass at him, and he had to catch it. So
I remember that video.
So my thing about fusion is taking the concept of fusion and everything is mixable.
Hmm.
Okay, it's like what Dixie Dregs did is they took country, rock, and jazz,
Yeah,
and then some.
I guess that's sort of the beginning of it, of the country thing too, because I started. Jeff Hostetter is probably one who really got me interested in listening to that stuff, because I mean he had that Friday night jam session, that bluegrass jam session there for years, um, at the shop in Shrewsbury. I don't know how long it went on. It seemed like it went for quite a number of years, and there was always people around, talking about Doc Watson or Merle Travis. Or they didn't talk about Jerry Reed. I always liked Jerry Reed though. I remember seeing him on I think it was the Glenn Campbell show when we were kids. You'd see him, and he'd be doing neat stuff like it's one song I've been working on lately. Neat little things like that he would put together.
So for those people who don't know who Jerry Reed is, he's the guy in Smokey and the Bandit movies.
Right, and for those of you who don't know
drives the truck.
And for those people who don't know who Smokey and the Bandit, what Smokey and the Bandit is, because not everybody's.
Then you got to download the movie.
No, then you gotta say, well, you remember the Water Boy?
Yeah.
The Water Boy movie? He was in that too. He was the really mean football coach in that movie.
Yeah.
It was Jerry Reed. That was like 20 years later.
Eric Johnson's one of his main influences.
Yeah, and you can see where he gets a lot of it from, but he even quotes him in his song. In his song that he calls tribute to Jerry Reed, at the end of the song where he goes, that's like a Jerry Reed song that he plays like that. It's like that stuff, right? What's that called? Red Hot Picker is the name of the song. And of course, it's got, do you ever notice how Jerry Reed sings kind of like Foghorn Leghorn?
Yeah.
And it's so cool because he can pull it off and it sounds great. Anybody else does that and they just think it's, ridiculous and stuff. But Jerry Reed pulls it off and makes it sound great.
The Amos Bruises.
Yeah, this is the way he sings. He
sounds like a hillbilly, like unapologetically.
Yeah, he talks. He tells a story, which is what we're all after when we play music anyway, and stuff. And so for me, fusion for me is like putting things together that you don't normally put together. And I know we're both involved in education, and so I thought, well, I'd sort of show you a little bit about how I've approached it at some point in terms of fusing things. Not necessarily jazz and rock, but just anything.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That is my definition, my revised definition of fusion.
Yeah, so one example of it, it's probably not really creative for me anymore because I've done it so much that it just sort of becomes more of a formula, but I always give people the example, if you want to create something that you've never done before, it's so hard to tell people how to do that. It's so hard to tell people, make something you never did before, right? Because they don't know what to do. But give them some parameters to put on it, and suddenly they'll get the ball and run with it, so to speak. Yeah. So I tell them, imagine the song the Beatles had called "Let It Be," right? This is one of the examples I always use. And I say, okay, now there's hardly any guitar in that song at all. It's mostly piano. What if Jimi Hendrix played that song? Is a way to get people thinking a little differently. There's no right or wrong answer.
Mm-hmm.
Hendrix never played that song. I was messing with this earlier. I don't know why. I was just kind of goofing off, and I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool. Is the beginning of Rebel Yell? You know, everybody knows now. I guess that Steve Stevens played that all with one guitar, right? So it's kind of like Jerry Reed type thing there, you know.
He played it with one guitar?
Yeah, yeah,
Never knew.
yeah. So. See, I'm trying to think. Well, how would Hendrix play that? You know, like. Right. Different type of Hendrix, not the Purple Haze kind of thing.
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
You know that.
More 1970.
Yeah, that kind of soul thing where he was.
Let's talk Hendrix, the rhythm player, the comper, the guy who knew more chords than any of his contemporaries.
Yeah.
He wasn't. The thing I think of about Hendrix is Clapton was trying to be a soloist. Jeff Beck never played any chords. Never played any chords. Jimmy Page played chords, but they were not, you know. Yeah, he did some stuff, but Hendrix
Did it all.
is like 55 years ago that his first recordings were coming out. We're still learning from them today.
Yeah.
Not just because of all the fireworks, of which were certainly true. Like Carlos Santana talks about how it's like when you had a black and white TV, Jimi Hendrix was like that color TV in Spectravision or whatever. Everything is in 3D. Once you hear it, oh, that's what's possible. But that's only one layer of Hendrix. The next layer is his ability to really, really kill it with the chords.
Yeah.
Progressions.
There's a couple Jeff Beck albums that I guess in the big picture, a lot of people probably don't really put them as their first favorite albums, but to me they were kind of really influential. Was the two of them that were called the Jeff Beck Group. The one's with Max Middleton.
All right.
The one that was Rough and Ready was the first one, and the other one was that one with the orange on the front. And those two albums, he played actually a lot of chords. It was like there was vocals, and when there was vocals, he was actually playing a rhythm guitar part. In a lot of it, I mean, I know there was like Going Down, like pretty much all lead, you know.
Yeah.
Things, but he had a couple songs on there that
There's a Dylan cover on one of those albums.
Yeah, Give Back the Love I Feel for You or something like that it was called, and there was also I forget what the name of that song is. End of Side One, where I learned how to bend notes like that. It's that Ashford and Simpson song. I forget what it's called. It was a great album. It was on the Orange album. I don't remember what it's called. That one. And I'm surprised I remember that, but that's how well I learned the songs all these years ago. That you just get to the point where you don't have to, go back and review them constantly. There's other songs I learned yesterday that I constantly have to keep updating and updating.
Yeah.
Just.
Well, the other thing is some of the stuff like 40, 50 years ago you struggled with.
Yeah. So you
for me, the things I struggled with are the stuff that's with me forever.
Yeah.
Okay. I can still play some of the things, like the first half of Bach's Foray in E minor.
Mm-hmm.
Like Scott Anderson sat at the edge of my bed and yeah. So I struggled with that forever, but and it's there. It's there.
Yeah. The I
So
mean,
with
there's
your students now, what are you doing? What is your what do you find yourself teaching? Like some of the principles that you find your students needing, and you want to what kind of wisdom do you want to impart?
uh, the main thing is rhythm. Just like knowing the rhythm. Uh, I tell them sometimes take all the notes out of it and play one note. I forget who I saw that do this. I think it was Scott Henderson. Said, "Hey, what song is this?" And he says, "You can tell it's Jingle Bells, even with just one note. You can tell it's Jingle Bells. Why?" He says, "Because it's the rhythm of the song that gives it away." And of course, we all know there's a little more to it than that.
Mhm.
Um, uh, if you played the rhythm to uh, "Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas," it may not necessarily be as noticeable that that's what the song is.
Mhm.
All you did was play it with one note. But he does get it. That does show you how important the rhythm is to a song. And so many times people are so focused on. I kind of look at it like you're more focused on where your fingers are than what's in here. And it should be the other way around. It should be what's in here is most important, and what's here is just a way of expressing that.
Yes.
And if this comes out a little sloppy, it doesn't really matter because it's what's in here that really matters,
Mhm.
and that's never sloppy. That's
Yeah. Yeah.
that's exactly what it should be.
Mhm.
Um, so there's you can listen to a lot of recordings and all kinds of recordings really, and you can hear things that we might think, is that a mistake? Does it really matter?
There's no the music we grew up on. There's mistakes everywhere
Yeah.
because the mistakes made it right. Made In other words, it brought the human element to it.
Yeah.
It wasn't meant to be quantized and to be auto-tuned into that was not seen as a bad thing. In other words, that's what made it
Yeah.
cool. Like the second time you run through that guitar part, and this is what happens, that little nuance that gave the
Mhm.
song its signature sound. That if you had to run it through a some sort of thing that quantized it, put it on a grid, and made every verse sound exactly the same,
Uh-huh.
it was a different world.
Um, I gave the example earlier. I think some of those moments are really magical. And I think we've all been in situations where we've been in the studio where something has happened and somebody said, "Are you sure you want to leave it there? Are you sure you want to do that?" And I've almost always said, "No, I want to get rid of it."
Mm-hmm.
And I remember one time, I don't think you've ever heard this song. It was an original song that I recorded. I mentioned that guy Dan Keeney earlier that I was in a band with. He worked at a studio down in Washington D.C. called Studio House North, and he was very kind in that he offered to bring me and Bill Ashball down there to record some original songs. And so I went down there and recorded 2 original songs that day, and got to play this. At the time, was a Kurzweil, brand new Kurzweil keyboard, a Bosendorfer grand piano, you know, all kinds of great stuff. DX, I think they had a DX7 there. Um, and I did a solo. I had my Marshall that was on the second floor, was turned up to 10, of course, but did the solo, and it was first take, seriously, first take. And after it was done, I said, "Okay, let me do another one because that one was pretty bad." And Dan looked at me and he goes, "Are you sure?" He goes, "Are you sure?" He said, "That was actually pretty good." And I'm like, "Well, yeah, that was the first take. I was just messing around." I said, "I want to do
That's the
another
best.
one."
Those are the best takes.
He wouldn't let me do it, and I'm really glad he didn't. He didn't let me. He did not let me erase it,
Yeah.
and he kept it. And that's one of my favorite things I've ever played.
Yeah.
you know, it's
Yeah.
just every note was just where it was supposed to be, and
Uh-huh.
I almost came that close to saying no. Let me get rid of it and do a real one. You know,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
and there's still some errors in it. I mean, I can hear them, I can pick them out, but it doesn't matter because
Doesn't have soul. If it was something, yeah, there's different layers of errors. Some of
yeah.
it's humanness.
And I was still in the point where I was into, that Alan Holdsworth kind of bendy type stuff. So there was probably some points in there where it was kind of out of tune a little bit, maybe, or
Yeah,
something like that. But I was into that. That was really cool. And um, I guess there's a lot of that, like I mentioned, that John Lennon thing, where he's changing his pickups, and you can hear it. You can hear him switch it. Uh, but I think that sounds great when you hear him switch it.
yeah.
It's almost like a foreshadowing of what's going to come. Um,
That's a new one. That's nuances that a lot of people would not have gotten.
yeah,
So,
uh,
last question:
yeah.
5 influential players that you think that influenced you that you think people should be hip to. 5, your top 5, right off
Well,
the top of your head.
right off the top of my head, well, I'd have to say, you mentioned Terry Kath. He was influential for me. Uh, Probably the next guy along would have to be Jeff Beck. I mean, that just opened up
Mhm.
worlds. Alan Holdsworth, no question that he's there no matter what. um, um, Eric Johnson, he's there no matter what. I mean, everybody knows that. you know, I haven't really learned any of his solos for a long, long time, and it's still there. So that'll probably never go away. And probably Mike Stern.
Okay,
Um,
Mike Stern. He's the
yeah,
one a lot of people have not heard about. Mike
yeah,
Stern he came up with, I think he played with Blood, Sweat, and Tears for a little bit.
yeah. There's a video of him playing with them and
Yeah.
Miles, and then he's pretty much been a solo guy, although he's played in some bands.
Steps Ahead, was he in
I think he did an album with them. He did an album with the Yellow Jackets.
Brecker Brothers?
Yeah, he did some Brecker Brothers stuff, and I believe he was with Jeff Lorber's Fusion
Okay.
more recently.
Mostly what people know of Mike Stern is
Yeah.
I think I did a show with him in
Well,
college.
although to be honest, it's kind of funny because in the jazz world, a lot of jazz guys don't know who like Eric Johnson is,
Yeah.
which I always thought was kind of weird. But they're like they don't know who he is because they just don't.
That's what we want to put. Yeah. That my thing. I think you're the same way.
Yeah,
Those borders don't have to be there because you have the Wes Montgomerys, we have the Joe Passes, we have all kinds of putting lines of like jazz good, rock bad. That's just silly because they're all different colors. But
yeah,
once you mix them up, that creates a different sound.
yeah,
So you mentioned Grant Green. These are Kenny Burrell. Uh,
yeah. Kenny Burrell was somebody I found later. Like,
that's the first jazz player I ever found.
uh,
I found him first. I found him before Wes and before Joe.
yeah. But Midnight Blues is a great album because it's a lot of pentatonic scales, which means for rock players, it's a great place to start.
Yeah.
Because like I recognize that sound. It's like I've heard it before.
Yeah.
Um,
And also I want to make note of as far as fusion goes, the Allman Brothers band. Dwayne Allman, reason everybody loves what he does, and is extra musical, and his big thing was he was trying to bring the Miles Davis vibe. Like he was super inspired by Miles and Coltrane, which
Yeah.
none of the rest of the guys really were. But that was the thing that he was like. I love Warren Haynes too, but Warren Haynes isn't. He's not that deep into that.
mhm.
It's that extra that secret sauce was his Miles and Coltrane, weird Coltrane, Love Supreme, kind of blue. So you listen to In Memory of Elizabeth Reed, and that's him
Yeah.
trying to vibe. How can I make that kind of attitude work for our improvisational stuff?
Yeah, I guess you obviously know who Derek Trucks is.
Yes.
Oh,
Well, he's the successor.
Yeah, because when you listen to especially his first album, he does like Naima and right, I think. plays that. I think it was on his first album, and he does a couple, maybe some Sonny Rollins. Uh,
What was the first Derek Truck band song lines? The first song on that.
yeah, it was the first Eric Trucks album. I think it came out in the late or the early 90s.
Volunteered Slavery. That's a cover. That's wonderful.
Here you go.
That's
Here's a
wonderful.
guy that a lot of people have.
It was a revolutionary jazz tune.
If you want to know a guy that has been really influential that a lot of people don't know of, Jimmy Herring.
Yes,
Uh,
jazz is dead.
and an aquarium rescue.
Yep. Yep.
I was in a band. We played compared to what? We compared to what, right? Like the we did that. And I'm trying to like I can't. I just can't. You know, he takes it so far out, you know, he's like all while you're over top of F, you know?
O'Teal's on that.
Yeah, yeah.
We were talking about the Allman Brothers. He was their last bass player.
And Apartment Q.
Yeah. With Jeff Stipe.
Yeah. Whatever alias he was going by back then.
Yeah.
And of course the Colonel Bruce, I mean
I never saw him with them. I never saw him, period. But it's like I got was he was not in it anymore.
Colonel Bruce came here with the Code Talkers. He was with the Code Talkers. Because you probably know Bobby Lee Rogers when you were at Berkeley.
I don't know.
Maybe not. Bobby Lee Rogers, great guitar player. Anyhow, Colonel Bruce Hampton was with the Code Talkers, and they played at the Crowbar here in State College. And a friend of mine, he was here in State College, he opened for him at the time, because they just got a band to open for him. Said he just looked like some guy he picked up a guitar. They said he didn't really know if he really knew how to tune his guitar. Really, you know, Colonel.
Well, he was more of a creative force, right?
Yeah. He was.
He's not really. He was not the virtuoso that he surrounded himself with.
No, Jimmy Herring had a good take on that too. He says, you know, Colonel Bruce Hampton said, you know, some days I'm going to sound good and some days I'm going to sound bad. He said that's the way life is. You know.
But I think, am I right in saying that he wasn't that? He was a creative. No. He was the muse of that.
No, he definitely was not the virtuoso that everybody else was in that band.
Yeah.
The one guy in that band, the I guess mandolin player, I forgot what the guy's name is right now. Was it Matt Monday? I think his name was. He was an awesome mandolin player, and I guess he just sort of disappeared after the Aquarium Rescue Unit. He was just gone.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the version of that band I knew. I got to go back to their old stuff. So anyway, Jeff, we will do this again.
Yeah, we must.
We'll do this again because we have more stuff to talk about. We're not done yet.
No, we're not.
My list's only halfway down.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much. And, anybody has any questions, just for Jeff, you can just, in the video, you can just put something in the in the stuff underneath the video.
Yeah, that's one thing we got to work on.
We're going to work on different ways of getting this out there.
Yeah, technically is how do we get questions?
Yes.
In a way that's not like, you know, if I have to go back and read comments and and all that stuff, it's sort of distracting. But in a way that we can do it. I don't know. Maybe we have a.
So anyway, so Jeff is this has been joyful.
Yeah,
fun. Very cool.
Yeah.
All righty. See you all.
Yeah.
We love guitar nerds. We love guitar. We love all kinds of guitar, not just rock guitar, not just jazz guitar, not just country guitar. We like all that. We throw it in there.
We even like waltzes. We like, you know.
Yes, yes. Polkas is where we draw the line though.
Yeah.
No more polkas. I'm kidding. That's a joke.
Right. Yeah.
All right. Goodbye, all. And
Yeah.
we'll see you next time.
See you guys.